Welcome in, everybody in Louisiana and elsewhere, to Bayou Bets for Thursday, July the 28th. Zach Ewing, along with Spencer the Guru Urquhart and Jim Derry with you on this fine July afternoon. We are headed toward August, guys. It will be, by the time we have our next show on Monday, it will be August the 1st. And that means NFL preseason. By the end of the month, it means college football will be here. It's that fantastic time of year. And to that end, we got a great show today. We're going to talk about some Michael Thomas stuff. Michael Thomas back at Saints practice as of yesterday. That's exciting news for the New Orleans Saints. We'll also continue our NFL previews with the AFC West that Jim and Spencer have been working so hard on. That's their division for today, the AFC West, or for this week, really. And then also coming up at 4:15, we are going to talk to Wilson Alexander, LSU football beat writer for The Advocate. He is going to come on and talk to us about the Tigers and what to expect from their season, which kind of gets going in earnest a week from today. They open up preseason camp out there at LSU. So a jam-packed show today, guys, and let's dig right in with what I think is maybe the most exciting news of the entire day. We have our own Bet.NOLA boost at Caesars Sportsbook.
I've already bet it.
Look at
Same
that.
here. Yeah, I bet it.
And look at Mark Guillory might be ready to bet as well. MT is back. MT Landry Olave about to eat. Well, if you think that is the case, Patricia, she's excited for Michael Thomas. If you think that is the case, check out the first Bet.NOLA.com odds boost at Caesars Sportsbook. It is for Michael Thomas to win the 2022 Comeback Player of the Year award. And whereas if you just go in through the app regularly to your NFL futures, it's going to be 12-1 plus 1,200. But we've got it boosted just for this weekend until midnight on Sunday to 15-1. So you get that little extra payday if you think Michael Thomas could win Comeback Player of the Year. And by the way, if you're not signed up for the Caesars Sportsbook, you need to get signed up for the Caesars Sportsbook. And you can do that too with another special deal at NOLA.com/Caesars. Your first bet, risk-free up to $1,500. You could use it on the same thing. You could use your odds boost on Michael Thomas and get that risk-free bet if you want to. Or
I want to know if if we're setting the boost, why couldn't we make it like plus 100,000 or something?
Well, we get to suggest what the boost be on. We don't get to set what the boost is.
Well, then
they have people smarter than us to do that.
That's not hard.
Yeah.
The smartest person in this show left, so
that's true. Especially if you're talking college football. Devin's gone, and I don't know who left the angry emoji on there, but yeah, I'm kind of angry about that. I'm still hurt about that. But let's talk Michael Thomas, guys. He's not a full participant in practice yet, but I have to say I was surprised he came back as early as he did. I mean, it was really the first full day of camp he was out there. They put him on the PUP list last week, and you think, oh, geez, here we go. It's going to be a couple weeks, and we don't know if we're going to see him. And Spencer and I were talking Tuesday in the fantasy show, like, you've got to see him out there before you can do anything. But look, he's back already, and even if he's not a full participant, I think that's got to increase optimism around the Saints, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a surprise that he's back. He's not going to do a lot of contact drills, I don't think, to start. I talked to Jeff Duncan. He's going to be our guest on Datitude tomorrow, and Michael Thomas has a chip on his shoulder, and we all know that he plays better when he's got a chip on his shoulder. And so what's not on this list, and I need to go look it up, but his total receiving yardage total, Duncan said it was somewhere around 800. If that's the case, that would be a great over bet. You could bet.
They've taken it down for now, so I wonder if that's because of he's back early and that number's going to go up. So
okay, well that would make sense why they took it down. But look, this dude's got something to prove. All these Saints fans, the naysayers, I know it's with every team, and so I see more of it with Saints fans. But it's the Jameis naysayers, the Michael Thomas naysayers, the things they get fired up about and hate. It's insane. It's mind-boggling, actually.
Yeah,
but Mike Thomas can be just fine.
Yeah, to Mark's point, it's also a contract year, so a little extra motivation there. Spencer, you are sort of the prop guru, the fantasy guru. It's in your name. How does this news change your outlook on Michael Thomas? The fact that he's back in practice already.
I'd say a slight stock up for sure. They came back a little earlier than expected. Was probably thinking he wouldn't be back till August, but he's already back. Looked pretty good on film, running and stuff. So yeah, definitely is positive. Like I said, I put a little something on him to win comeback player of the year because he'll definitely have that chip on his shoulder, and very well could be in for 1,000-yard plus season. And if so, he'll end up a value in fantasy drafts. I'm still a little nervous though, considering he hadn't played in over a year. It's just hard for me to invest one of my early picks in him. But if I could get him in like the 7th round, I'd take him, maybe the 6th if I'm feeling lucky, but probably not quite that high.
All right, let's move on and talk a little AFC West. If you are just joining us for the first time or you don't know, going through a different NFL division each week leading up to the season. We have done the 2 East divisions, started AFC East, did NFC East. Now we're doing the AFC West, which might be the best division in football, and we'll talk about that. But Jim every week goes through. I guess I'm frozen. Sorry.
Your video's frozen. We can hear you.
Okay. Well, we'll let the camera sort itself out. But Jim, you go through a team each Tuesday through Friday on their win total and have a video with Adam Chernoff of covers.com, and then Spencer does fantasy in the afternoons.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far. It's hard to believe that the end of next week will be the halftime. It seems like, I don't know, it seems like we've been working on them for 4 months and 2 days all at the same time. And for the 4 months and 2 days, not 4 months and 2 days. But this is the most interesting division in football, I think, because there are 4 really good teams, in my opinion. Somebody's going to be worse than they're supposed to be, like way worse than they're supposed to be, and somebody's going to take that next step. Somebody's going to win 12 or 13 games. The toughest schedules in football as a whole is the AFC West. So some really tough schedules. Had to redo the Chargers. Little insider here. We usually do these videos on Monday, and then they're set for the week. But because there was so much fluctuation in these numbers this week, a lot of people are betting in the AFC West. I had to redo the Chargers video that we're going to run tomorrow. So interesting numbers for the Chargers. We'll get to them in a minute, but I don't want to give anything away. And obviously the Chargers we'll talk about on Monday. But the other 3 teams, the Raiders, have changed drastically over the past week. Their numbers have dropped a significant amount. You see the Raiders division odds at plus 450. They were plus 700 to start the week. So somebody plopped a big old amount of money on the Raiders. And I got a little bit on them, but not as much as I wish I would have done at plus 700. So, but if you look at these numbers, and the Chiefs' numbers have gone down, they were plus 150. Chargers going from 250 to 200. Broncos, I think, are pretty close to the same number, maybe a little bit lower.
Might have been 350. Yeah.
They're right around. They're pretty close to the same. So, but these numbers have fluctuated, and I think now that we're getting into camp, and especially the fact that we are going to be once preseason starts, I think they're going to change. They're going to be fluctuating, and I'm going to have to spend a lot more time paying attention to the changes than I have been over the first few weeks. But this is in a very interesting division. Like I say, I think you'll see the most points and the most yardage from this division. The 4 overall, the best quarterback division. If you put these 4 quarterbacks together, it would be tough to find another division that has 4 quarterbacks as good as this one does. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what the AFC West is going to do. And they play each other a lot in the early part of the season. So it'll be a lot of fun.
All right, so we started on Tuesday with the Broncos. Jim, the win total videos are up on bet.NOLA.com along with his pick. And then the fantasy videos show up in the afternoon. Have not gotten to the Chargers yet. And you saw in those odds, the Chargers are almost co-favorites now with the Chiefs at Caesars Sportsbook, which is pretty shocking. But we started with the Denver Broncos, and obviously they got Russell Wilson in this year. Spencer, I am of the opinion, and I'll let you guys each chime in quickly. I'm of the opinion that Russell Wilson makes this team better, but I don't know that he makes them a Super Bowl contender like these odds kind of suggest.
Yeah, it's tough to really say they're a Super Bowl contender because they've got a new coach, it's a new system over there. It's going to be a lot of changes going on. I mean, their defense will still be solid, but they're gonna probably go through some growing pains, and then that division is just growing. You don't have time for growing pains. I mean, you got all heavy hitters in there, so yeah, it's gonna be tough for them to. I mean, they might not even make the playoffs. I mean, I'd almost think there's a little bit of value with them to not make the playoffs. At plus 140 is not really a Russell Wilson problem. It's just the division is a problem. There's just too much competition there.
I mean, the Broncos defense very good last year. To hit that win total over, they'd have to win 11 games, Jim.
Yeah, look, Adam was very neutral on the Broncos, but I think I have my strongest opinion in the entire division. It's a tie between Kansas City and Denver, and these numbers for Denver are just absurd. I mean, 16-1 to win the Super Bowl, 8.5 to 1 to win the AFC. Don't touch those with a stick. You can't bet them to win the division. I agree wholeheartedly with Spencer. In fact, I think there's strong value on the no at plus 140 to make the playoffs. And I got to be honest, not only would I be surprised if they won 10 games, I'd be almost shocked. This is not a 10-win team, and that number is absurd.
Yeah, it seems high to me too. I could buy a 9.5, a 10. I just don't see how you're doing better than a push if you bet the over. So Wednesday was about the Chiefs. Obviously, they're the team trying to hang on here to division supremacy. It's been their division for the past few years. Struggled at the start of last year, got going. Man, you can get them at almost 2-1 just to win the division. I know it's a good division, but is Tyreek Hill worth that much?
I'll say this. I think there is strong value, just like I said, Broncos and Chiefs are my strongest opinions in this division. The Chiefs, and I said this earlier in the week, and it's already coming to fruition, and we're not even done with previewing the division. Do not bet the Chiefs right now. Wait till this number goes down, and it's already changing. It was a plus 1,000 at the beginning of the week. It's plus 1,100 now. You might be able to get the Chiefs later on in like early October because they're scheduled the first 2 months of the season is absolutely brutal. It is the toughest first half schedule in the NFL, period. And so if they start out 4-3 or 5-3 or something like that, that Super Bowl number might go as high as plus 1,800 or plus 2,000. Then you're getting a major bargain. And if you don't want to take the chance, go ahead and take them because I still think that's a value. All these numbers for the Chiefs overs are values. I think their win total is a value. I think their odds to win the division at plus 190. That is amazing. To me, there's no doubt in my mind this is still the best team in the division, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah, Spencer, minus 240 to make the playoffs. I don't like laying that much juice, but like that number should be lower than that. Minus 240 to make the playoffs seems like a gimme.
Yeah, I don't think I'd lay it, honestly, because in that division, I mean, nobody's safe. Even the Chiefs, as strong as the Chiefs appear with their foundation of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, it's just there's no safety there. If they get off to a bad start and get some injuries or something, and then the second half comes around where they're they're most likely to have a winning record. But if they're beat up heading into that stretch, there's no guarantee they make it. I personally wouldn't lay the juice. I think they'll make the playoffs, but I'm kind of feeling the Chargers as far as winning the division.
Anybody who wants to bet the plus 200, no offense, I love you, Caesars, but you can just call me. Call me if you want to bet plus 200 to not make the playoffs. If you think the Chiefs have a 1 to 2 chance that they're not going to make the playoffs, just give me a call, give me an email, and we'll find a way to do it with a po' boy or several po' boys or however you want to do it.
Po' boy stuffed with cash.
They're not going to miss the playoffs. Go ahead and put this in your little library.
I mean, like I said, I don't like the minus 240 juice, especially on a future where they hold the money for so long. But that just seems like an investment. I mean, unless they have – now, if Mahomes gets hurt, that's different. Okay, so something could happen. But
free money.
Spencer, you mentioned the Chargers. We'll finish up this division on Monday with the Chargers. Our team today featured on bet.NOLA.com is the Las Vegas Raiders. And I know Mark in the comments has been all about the Raiders. But look, for the worst team in this division, and you mentioned it, Jim, like there's a lot of steam coming in on this team. They've got better odds than the Saints, and they're the worst team in this division, supposedly.
Well, it's because of that 8.5 number. I mean, when you look at that 8.5 number, to me, I don't quite understand. Well, I mean, I understand why it is where it is, but I think you're still getting a bargain there. I don't love it as much as I thought I was going to love it going into this whole thing. And they have the seventh toughest schedule in the NFL, and they have some spots that are really brutal. The biggest problem for the Raiders is this. Now, they have a lot of veterans on this team, so it's not as big of a deal for them as it might be for another team. But their schedule starts off so tough. If they get off to a 1-4 start, it's going to be tough to overcome that. And there's a decent chance they play at the Chargers to get started, Arizona at Tennessee, Denver, and at Kansas City before their bye week, and then it gets a little bit easier. But then the end of the schedule, the last 6 weeks of the schedule, tough again. So that's why their number is what it is. But I still think I'm not a big fan of laying 130 on a win total. But if I was going to do it, this would probably be one of the teams I'm going to do it with. We'll see how quick Devontae Adams and Derek Carr get together. And this defense, if they can do what they did last year and still stay just above middle of the pack, they'll be just fine.
Whoa, Mark's lighting up slot machines out there.
Well, I will say this to Mark, and this I've already bet. Go out and Adam Chernoff talked about this. This was one of his top bets of all of the NFL. To bet the Raiders to score the most points in the NFL, I think there's a chance it happens. And you're getting plus 2,000 right now at Caesars. Great value on that. In fact, you showed those numbers before. If I'm going to bet a value on the Raiders, to me, it's that. The bet in the plus 2,000, they'll score the most points in the NFL. There's the legitimate chance they could do that.
Wow. And that would mean big things in Spencer's fantasy world as well. But, hey, I want to shift gears to the college football slate. And at this point, bring in Wilson Alexander, beat writer for The Advocate for LSU football. And he's going to talk some LSU with us with camp just a week away. Wilson, where does the time go?
I don't really know. I'd like to maybe get a little bit of it back. But, hey, football's almost here. And I think we can all be excited about that.
Yeah, it is here for us. We've been talking futures bets for a while. And so we don't ask beat writers to make picks, but we do want to know what is your general outlook on LSU season? I mean, I can't remember another time when they had so many question marks going into camp. I think we learn a lot next month.
We really are going to learn a lot over the next month because, like you said, there's so many new faces on this team, 15 transfers. And we even a whole new recruiting class in addition to that, about another 15, true freshmen or so. And then there's also everybody who's new off the field. The entire personnel department is different. All the analysts are pretty much different. And then, of course, the whole coaching staff has been completely remade. It makes it difficult to project because there's almost no data to go on. So we're going to learn a lot over the next month, and it makes it difficult to project what this kind of team LSU is going to be. But they certainly have talent, and that makes you a little bit more confident in what they can do than maybe they did the last 2 seasons.
There we go. That's what I was trying to do. We made Wilson the spotlight here. I think you mentioned it. The first question anybody is going to ask is who's going to be the quarterback. You talked to Brian Keller, at least got to hear him speak at the Baton Rouge Rotary Club earlier this week. Any insight? Jaden Daniels, Miles Brennan, I think are your top 2 candidates, but could there be a surprise? Do you think it's one of those 2 guys? And if so, who would you lean toward?
It's hard to say because it really seems like a true 3-man race even. I mean, obviously Miles and Jaden are the older of the group, but Garrett Nussmeier had a really impressive spring, and he shouldn't be completely counted out of this at all heading into preseason camp. Brian Kelly didn't reveal who was going to be the quarterback or even when they're going to make a decision on who's going to be the quarterback, though they would like to make that as early in camp as possible to build chemistry around that person. They want to give all 3 of these guys a chance. They even mentioned Walker Howard, though it's sort of assumed he's going to redshirt as a true freshman in that group. Brian mostly said what he has ever since spring practice ended, which is that back in the spring, they were installing the offense, and that didn't give the quarterbacks a real chance to move ahead one another. They're going to install and run plays specifically tailored to these quarterbacks once they get into preseason camp. More things that show off Jaden Daniels' legs, or maybe Miles Brennan's decision making, or things like that. Garrett Nussmeier's ability to throw off platform to really highlight their strengths, and then hope that one of them just naturally emerges and asserts themselves out of doing that.
For sure. So Wilson, I know LSU's got a lot of A lot of talent at the wide receiver position. Keyshawn Butte, obviously the number one, but which guys do you expect to really emerge behind Keyshawn? I know we got a couple guys that I covered back in Lafayette with Jack Besh and Malik Neighbors.
Jack and Malik, I think, are really going to have some good years. Jack, we saw what he can do as a freshman, and it would be impressive if he's able to continue to build on that, just because of his role is going to change a little bit in this offense. He's not going to really be that hybrid tight end anymore. He'll be more of a true wide receiver. That's what he is again. So it's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts. He's excited about that, to be sure, but he'll be able to get used more on the outside and that kind of thing. And Malik, I mean, he had an incredible spring. He's someone who, he's got to maybe tone down the jawing a little bit on the field. That's not really what Brian Kelly likes, but you could just see how strong his hands were, how he fights for the ball in traffic. He's got speed. He was an impressive player in the spring. That's just that group of sophomores with Jack, Malik, Brian Thomas, and Chris Hilton. Though Chris is a redshirt freshman, it's going to be interesting to see what LSU kind of does with them. Because then again, you also have Jure Jenkins, kind of steady, reliable senior in there. And even Kyron Lacey, who transferred over from the Raging Cajuns, could end up getting into this group as well. They don't have like a ton of depth necessarily. I mean, there's like maybe 7 guys, which, I mean, you could say obviously that's depth. But, those guys are going to rotate after Keyshawn, and we'll just see kind of who steps up out of the pack.
Wilson, there are a whole lot of new players, but at the same time, for the guys that are returning, how hard has it been for these guys to get adjusted to Brian Kelly's style and for basically an entire new staff?
It took some time. The players admitted that right off the bat, they weren't quite sure what to make of Brian Kelly, because they sort of had the preconceived notion of him that a lot of people do, leaving Notre Dame, that he was going to be yelling a lot and red-faced, and they didn't quite know what to make of him. But he seems to really won this team over. I mean, every time you talk to the players, they like what he does in terms of accountability and discipline. And they say there's a trust there between him. They've even seen him be a little bit funnier than they expected. And when you talk to recruits coming off official visits, they're pleased with how open he is. Something that they also didn't expect before they came down to actually visit campus at LSU. So he seems to have connected well with them. But that stuff does take some time to kind of really get in place and get settled. And it'll be intriguing to see, how LSU plays this year, because it is going to be somewhat, to a degree, a reflection of how much he's been able to instill the standards and the new culture that he wants around the program.
How has he been with you guys?
Oh, he's been good. Yeah, he was really open in the spring. I mean, we got to see the entirety of 2 practices, which I've never witnessed a full college practice. We got to, we're able to do that twice, and he's been accessible for the most part. So certainly no complaints on our end, but that's definitely not what's going to win you or lose you football games either way.
Speaking of that, we just showed the futures odds for LSU. Here they are again. The odds makers fairly pessimistic on the Tigers. A win total of only 7. Obviously, in the SEC West, life is going to be difficult. We laughed about this last week too. The SEC championship odds and national championship odds are exactly the same, because if you can win one, why can't you win the other? But do you sense? I mean, listen, in August camp, everybody's optimistic every single year. But do you sense that there's that level of concern around the program, that a 7-win season or something, which at LSU is a disaster, quite frankly, like a 7-win season is possible?
It's hard to say. I haven't gotten much of a sense of maybe around the program what they're thinking, if they're only going to win 7 games or not. But you look at that group of the SEC West that's like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Auburn, LSU, and you can maybe even lump Arkansas into that to a degree. They're all somewhat the same in some ways. They've brought in some transfers, or they lost some players, or there was, like in Auburn's case, just like a tumultuous offseason. And they're all going to play each other, and we'll see how it shakes out. And you'd expect maybe some close games in that group at this point of the year. Of course, it's hard to predict. But there's so much turnover that, we were talking earlier about LSU being hard to predict. It's hard to predict across college football this year. There's like a very small number of teams where you can say, like, okay, yeah, I know what they're bringing back. And there's so few teams that have that returning production that it makes it difficult to really say who's going to finish ahead of who, maybe more so than in previous years.
And to be fair, that was not a fair question, because camp hasn't even started yet. So how could you know? But I think this is a little bit of an LSU football crossroads, and it's on the surface, at least from the outside looking in, it's hard to imagine a more different coaching personality going from Ed Orgeron to Brian Kelly. You said Brian Kelly's been good with you guys, been good with the media. Obviously, he's had some success in the recruiting trail, but this is a shift, right, in personality for LSU?
It absolutely is. It's actually something I wrote about yesterday after his Rotary Club visit, because it came up again, that idea of cultural fit and whether or not Brian Kelly, who's sort of vanilla and buttoned up, fits in around LSU, which can be so chaotic sometimes. But that's exactly the thing that LSU is trying to change here. You go from Ed Orgeron, who's pounding his chest and jogging shirtless, and is quite a character and colorful in that way, but a program that ended up over the last 2 years being really chaotic on the inside, and just it crumbled from within. And obviously you could see that on the field. And they're trying to get back to a point where things are stable, where you have a boring off season. That's a good thing in this case, because they don't want that drama to continue. They want this to be a program that's consistently competing for championships and winning 10 games. And then when you have a down year, you're not falling from undefeated to 5-5 and then 6-7. You're falling to like 10 wins, maybe 9 wins, kind of like what you see with Alabama over the years, or even Clemson under Dabo Swinney. They're trying to get to that, and what Notre Dame has been here recently, and then still compete for championships. But so it's more steady year after year, and that will be a departure that is different. But it's also why, in terms of cultural fit, that's not going to make a difference. Really matter ultimately, as long as he's winning games. As he said yesterday, it doesn't care where you're from. It matters really what's going on the inside of that building.
Around here, we're always trying to keep Spencer from taking his shirt off and beating his chest. So I might need to talk to Coach Kelly about some tips on that. Wilson, Spencer asked you about the wide receivers. I want to go to the other side of that battle, the cornerbacks. Correct me if I'm wrong. LSU lost every starting cornerback it had last year, and then some. Brought in some transfers, have some new faces. This is DBU. I mean, this is something they want to have be part of their identity. What does that position group look like, and how critical will that be in preseason camp?
It is a complete remake. Derek Stingley is gone. Eli Ricks is gone. Dwight McGlothern is gone. Cordell Flott is gone. Dwight McGlothern didn't even start the year last year as a starter. It ended up being one because of injuries and the like. And, he's now at Arkansas. This is a complete and total remake, top to bottom, of the cornerback, of outside cornerback. The safety is a little bit still similar, except for the addition of Joe Fouché. And then Greg Brooks, who came from Arkansas, he's a nickel safety, kind of a hybrid, and they're playing it more on the in the slot. And so that's maybe an exception. But at outside corner, it's completely different. You're looking at a bunch of transfers. Mekhi Garner from over in Lafayette, Jarek Bernard-Converse from Oklahoma State, and Sevyn Banks from Ohio State. And those three are going to be competing for those two starting spots on the outside. Jarek Bernard-Converse was an all Big 12 selection at Oklahoma State last year, so you would maybe pencil him in because he's, I guess, probably the most sure thing, but he didn't practice this spring because of a Jones fracture in his foot. And then Sevyn Banks, he's been cleared by LSU's doctors medically, but he had some injury issues at Ohio State. When he was at Ohio State, he was a starter. And then Mekhi, he's a really motivated guy to try to prove that he belongs at this level. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in preseason camp, because you got 3 guys for 2 spots. But so they have some options. They have probably some quality options, but with some question marks there as well, particularly with Sevyn and Mekhi.
A couple of questions from readers here, from viewers, I should say, that I want Wilson to take a crack at. Will Jacobian Guillory crack the starting lineup? That's a defensive tackle, big, strong kid. Obviously, again, camp hasn't started yet. It's hard to say this for sure, but what have you heard around Jacobian Guillory?
Well, I see that question's from Mark Guillory. So if y'all are related, maybe he would be the best person to answer.
AP All-American, Mark.
Jacobian, he's going to have a shot, certainly. He's, kind of in his junior, I guess, redshirt sophomore year here. And, year 3, I should say, and he's developed well. They liked what they saw of him back in the spring. He was mostly rotating behind Jacqueline Roy, but, they're sort of going to use that rotation like you typically do on the defensive front in modern college football, just to keep up with like offenses that are running at usually a higher tempo these days. He's certainly going to play, and it'll be interesting to see kind of who shakes out as a starter there, kind of at that nose tackle, kind of over the center, over the guard. because it could end up being Roy, it could end up being Guillory, and even Mekhi Wingo, who's been a really solid transfer from Missouri. You're old school there, Zach. They like him a lot. He had a really good summer in terms of the workouts, won an award just the other day for his effort in the summer. And so those three are going to be really competing for those spots. And I would say that Roy maybe had an edge coming out of the spring because he was with the first team defense the most that I saw during the spring. But all three have been productive.
It's interesting you bring up Mekhi Wingo and coming from Missouri because it leads more or less into this next question. Some people say it as college free agency. You have NIL deals. They're starting a new rule where you can basically transfer as many times as you want with no penalty, or they're trying to get that passed. The atmosphere around college sports has changed big time in a hurry. How well positioned is LSU for that change?
I'd say that they're fairly well positioned. I'm going to have more out on this over the weekend about especially when we talk about NIL. They've come up with a much more comprehensive and sustainable plan. Ever since Louisiana amended the NIL law, LSU's been able to be more competitive. They can actually facilitate deals now. They weren't able to do that before that law was amended this summer. And so now they've partnered with Altius, which they've been in partnership with education, but now Altius is going to have a few people. Actually, LSU has its own NIL department, and Altius is going to be part of that. And they have liaisons with all the other teams. And Brian Kelly has a really sort of interesting philosophy on this. It's very detailed and thought out. And while LSU is not going to pump money into recruits on the front end like you may be seeing at some other schools, that's not the strategy that they want to take. They still feel like they're going to be competitive in that environment and able to keep up just fine. And we're seeing right now in the recruiting show, I mean, they have a top 10 class at the moment. And so that seems to be working, though they've missed out on some of maybe the 5 stars, top 100 guys. And they will have to kind of get that, back on track moving forward. So I think they're well equipped. I mean, this is an athletic department that has done things under Scott Woodward, and when Stephanie Rimp was here, her as well, pretty thoughtfully. And they've got, especially when you talk about football, this personnel department is, they have guys who are just dedicated to looking at rosters around the Power 5, just so if a player transfers, they already have the intel on them. That's why they were able to move pretty quickly, even with a skeleton crew, to get those 15 transfers back in the winter. And so I would say they're probably positioned pretty well to be able to weather this thing and remain competitive moving forward. But we'll actually, we'll have to see as time goes on.
Well, Wilson, before we let you go, we don't ask beat writers to make betting picks, but I think it's fair on this early date, knowing that you can change your mind after watching them for the next month. But on this July 28th, the week before preseason camp starts, what is your official record prediction for LSU? Unofficial record prediction.
Unofficial record prediction. I've gotten asked this question a little bit over the summer, and I've kind of come back to 8-4. I think is a reasonable spot. I'd be surprised if this team was not largely improved over the last 2 years, both in terms of just things like getting plays called in at the right time and discipline and just playing cleaner football. And I think that'll lead with the talent LSU has at the top of the roster to a more, better season. But this is still going to be a team that is maybe a little bit in transition. Whenever you go through a rebuild like that, it can take time. And so I think it would be kind of crazy to predict, a 10-win season right off the bat. But so I'll say 8-4. But let's see kind of how things look against Florida State, and then maybe have to revisit it. If they win that game, I'll feel pretty good about it. If they lose, then maybe 7-5.
That is a pivot game. And then one more for you, Wilson, a big baseball fan, big Atlanta Braves fan. Yes or no on a repeat?
No, they're not going to repeat, but that's okay because we won last year, so it's all right.
That's right. All right, Wilson Alexander, LSU football beat writer for The Advocate. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Y'all have a great rest of your day.
All right.
Thanks, Wilson.
That is Wilson, and I thought that was very good, very informative. Look, it's still a week before training camp. It's difficult to say exactly what's going to happen. But I think I agree with Wilson. I agree with Mark. 8-4 seems reasonable.
You're so excited your video froze up again, but that's okay. I think 8-4 is a little optimistic, but it is early, so we don't have to make official picks right now. I haven't touched LSU future one way or the other. I think there's a reason why it's even money to bet the over 7. I think that in a couple years, after Brian Kelly really gets his foot in there and makes his presence known, and Walker Howard, it becomes a starter later on, I think this team is going to be back to where LSU fans want them to be. I just think that's going to take a little time, and I think it's a little unreasonable to think they're going to come in this year and go gangbusters. So, really, the goals for this team, I know that's not going to be their goal, but for fans, I think the goal for this team should be bowl game. If they make a bowl game, even if it's the Eat Cheetos Bowl or whatever, Eat Soup, chicken soup bowl, whatever it is.
Bad Boy Mowers Bowl.
There you go. Bad Boy Mowers. I love that one. Gasparilla Bowl, whatever it is. Just make a bowl game, and it's a start. And, as long as maybe Tigers fans will start having realistic expectations because they haven't for quite a while.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, 8-4, like you see the win total at 7, and it's juiced to the under, and you think, what the hell? LSU is better than that. Look, even if they beat Florida State, which is certainly no guarantee, LSU, I think, is a 3.5-point favorite. Even if they beat Florida State on September the 4th in the Caesars Superdome, then they probably at that point go 4-0 in the non-conference. However, that still means you got to go 4-4 in the SEC. And by the way, Alabama is really, really freaking good. Texas A&M is really good this year. Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi
really
State,
good.
Like those are toss-ups. To go 4-4 in the SEC is not an easy thing.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm thinking though, if I'm an LSU fan, and I want a winning season for sure. I know they have a bowl game, Jim, but a 6-6 bowl game would be.
Well, you win the bowl game, you go 7-6.
Yeah, for sure. I would want to, to me, I'm sure the players want 9-10 wins, which, you never know if things break right, but I doubt that. I'm thinking 7 or 8, but I like that the over juice to plus 100. I might take a shot on that. I think that's pretty good value.
Yeah, I don't mind the over 7. I certainly wouldn't bet the under because I don't think they'll go only 6-6. I think 7-5 is a floor. Kyle, I would say, LSU spent a lot of money on Brian Kelly. It's the first year. He hasn't even had a full year.
That's my point.
Yeah.
LSU fans there are a lot of unrealistic fans on this planet, including New Orleans Saints fans. And I guess they kind of go along. But LSU fans are some of the most unrealistic fans in the world. They want to be, I know everybody wants to be Alabama, and that's great in theory and all that, but it is what it is. Coach just doesn't jump in. He's left with Brian Kelly's left with what he has, and they don't have the talent to win 8 games this year. I don't think. It'd be nice if they do, but to me, Miles Brennan, I'm going to be super nice here, and is an average quarterback. And I'm being super nice when I say that. So until they can get to the point where they can count on Walker Howard, who I think is going to be a fantastic college football quarterback, they're going to struggle on offense. They just are. And their defense, we talked about a whole new secondary. It's not easy to just jump in. Even if you're DBU, you're talking about a different conference and a different world, and it's DBU, but at least you usually have 1 or 2 guys coming back that are studs, are going to be high draft picks, and maybe some of these guys will be high draft picks, but you can't expect them on day one to be studs.
Kyle, I believe Brian Kelly just turned 60 this year. I think I remember seeing that.
Means he's got 10 years left, 10, 12 years left.
And he'll be fine. Look, I just don't know. This year, I think that win total is right about where it should be. I see 6 or 7 as the floor. I see 8 as maybe 9 as the ceiling. And so, you could argue maybe it should be 7.5. But I think at 7, I don't see a ton of value either way on that. And look, the SEC West, Wilson said it. There's a lot of teams that don't bring a ton back, but Alabama brings they might bring more back than any team in college football history, at least at the skill positions. You talk, that team is loaded. Texas A&M is loaded. And yes, LSU gets Alabama at home, but they're still going to be significant underdogs. They go to College Station. They'll be significant underdogs in that game. They get Tennessee and Florida out of the East, which is you don't have to play Georgia, but it's still not a good draw.
Tough. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be tough. And I think if you can go 4-4 in the SEC, 8-4 overall, You take that right now.
Doesn't Bama get like Vanderbilt every year or something?
No, they get Tennessee.
Oh,
third Saturday in October.
Well, their other game is always super easy then. It seems like they have just super easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, unless it's Georgia or Florida. They did play Florida last year. Alabama did. Close game. But unless it's Georgia or Florida, the team you're getting out of the East, every now and then, Missouri's had a couple good teams. Kentucky or South Carolina maybe might have a good team every now and then. But the West is just stronger. It just is. So that is.
Before we move on, I have one last question, and it's for Spencer. Spencer, if you played college football fantasy, where would you rank Miles Brennan in the fantasy SEC quarterback rankings?
I mean, he's got to win the job first. So
there you go.
Probably not too high. No, I would not be drafting Miles Brennan. I'll stash Walker Howard if it's a dynasty. I'll stash Walker and have him for the next year and the year after.
I think that's a great idea.
I will say this. It is a down year for quarterbacks in the SEC. After we had a real good one, and that's what happens in college, right? Like these guys all leave. Outside of Bryce Young at Alabama, Arkansas brings back KJ Jefferson, who's I think a part-time starter. Tennessee has Hendon Hooker, who was a part-time. No, he was pretty much their starter. Did a pretty good job last year. After that, you get a bunch of guys. Stetson Bennett took over that starting job last year for Georgia. But you got a lot of guys who haven't played a lot. And so LSU will not be at a huge disadvantage there. The funny thing is A&M got Max Johnson, who left LSU and is likely the starter. So he may rank pretty high in those rankings at this point. I think LSU would love Max Johnson at this point.
For sure. I mean, he would be the best of the bunch, I think, without question.
All right, that is our segment on LSU. We talk some NFL here on Bayou Bets for this Thursday. Want to wrap the show up with a little look at Major League Baseball. A little bit of a different look at the odds this week. Caesar Sportsbook has these up. Odds to make the playoffs. And we'll start in the American League, where, quite frankly, it is still sort of a free-for-all. There's only like 3 or 4 teams that you can say out of the 15 will definitely not make the playoffs. The Baltimore Orioles at the bottom of that list, they won again today. You can get them at 20-1 to make the playoffs. I don't think that's terrible value, although they have the problem is they have so many teams they would have to catch. They have a winning record at this point, but there's so many teams in that kind of that bunch between 500 and 10 games over 500 going up to like Toronto and Seattle. Spencer, you first. Any value on this list for you?
Let's see. Yeah, none that's really stands out to me. Maybe with the AL Central teams, maybe the Guardians at plus 155. I think they could win the division, and you're getting them at plus odds to make the playoffs. That'd probably be the only value here. Maybe Tampa Bay at minus 170. I feel like I'm pretty confident they'll make it, so I'd feel comfortable laying the juice there. But yeah, not a whole lot of value here, it doesn't look like.
Yeah, the thing about those Central teams, Jim, is I'm not sure any of them can win a wild card. So you might be better off just betting on the division.
I agree, but I don't understand. I don't think the Orioles are going to make the playoffs. But if you're asking me if I want to take my money and put it on the Rays at minus 170 or the Orioles at plus 2,000, and they're only a few games apart, I'm going to take the Orioles every day in Christmas. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. That number doesn't make any sense at all.
It's possible, by the way, these numbers, as you see at the bottom there, were grabbed at noon today, and the Orioles actually beat the Rays this afternoon. Do yourself a favor and look up the Trey Mancini highlight from the 8th inning. He hit what they called an inside the park home run. It was definitely a 4-base error Little League home run. I guess that's home team scoring. But it was spectacular viewing. You got to look it up on social media. Hit off the outfielder's head and rolled into the corner. Just unbelievable. So those, anyway, long story short, those odds may have changed since the Orioles did beat the Rays today. There might have been a little bit of shift, but you're still going to get a lot better juice on Baltimore than you would on Tampa Bay. At this point.
We joke about umpires and how bad they become, and I think they're like begging for this automated strike zone. Nobody ever talks about how awful, and it's been for years awful. The official scoring in baseball is just awful.
Yeah, I challenge anyone. Come back to Bayou Bets on Monday at 4 p.m. and tell me you think that this should have been scored a home run, that it was scored correctly after you watch this highlight, because I've not seen a single person besides the official scorer at Camden Yards say this should have been a home run. It's a great story. They had a day at Camden Yards today where they were honoring a young Orioles fan who died of cancer. Trey Mancini had cancer, so it's sort of a special connection for him. And so it's a cool deal. But man, oh man, oh man.
By the way, the Orioles are off the board.
It can't be a home run. All right. Nick says the Cubs have won 6 in a row. Watch out. Let's do the National League odds. National League odds to make the playoffs. They don't have the Cubs yet, so you'll have to check on that. This one is not quite as wide open. It's Dodgers, Mets, Braves are going to make it. It's looking like the Brewers and Padres will be in, which means, Spencer, it kind of comes down to your Cardinals and the Phillies for the final spot, with maybe a chance the Giants get back in the race. Cardinals, of course, also have a chance to catch Milwaukee and win the Central.
Yeah, I guess I see some value with the Cardinals here. I mean, as long as they can, get some more pitching healthy. The trade deadline's coming up. That could really shift the odds for some of these teams. So there's that's something that if there's a value you like here, get it now, because the trade deadline could shake things up. But yeah, I like the Cardinals right now because I feel like they'll be able to get a pitcher or two at the deadline. And the Giants might be worth a shot. They're always a pesky team. They always seem to kind of catch fire down the stretch. So, I mean, maybe try them at plus odds, but I'd probably say the Cardinals would be the best value on that board.
I will say this, Jim. I would not, unless we're talking about Juan Soto, I don't think that one player in baseball should dramatically shift the odds. And so if you see somebody go get Frankie Montas or Luis Castillo or one of these pitchers and all of a sudden their odds drop down, you're getting a raw deal.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those years where there really aren't any awe-inspiring trades. Maybe Soto, if he goes, we'll see. If I were the Nats, I would try to figure out how to lock that guy up. I mean, I don't know how you do it if he doesn't want to stay. But so really, other than that, we were talking about this in fantasy in my NL only league. I don't think there's going to be a whole bunch of trades there that are going to move the needle all that much. This is going to be one of the weaker trade deadline days, I think.
I think it's funny because if Soto goes, that's one of the biggest deadline trades in Major League history.
But then
if he doesn't, you're right. It might be very slow. So it could be all or nothing. We shall see. There
are a bunch of Cubs that are probably going to be going.
Yeah, that's Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ. That tearful embrace in the dugout. That was, even as a non-Cubs fan, something to watch.
I mean, I was crying not because they're gone, but because they keep. I don't understand what they're trying to do. I mean, they have no vision. It's like we're back in 1995 again. And
they keep winning, which is screwing up the draft pick for next year. So what's going on?
No, I don't care about that.
Our good friend Jerry, afternoon to Jerry. Michael Thomas is back. That's a good way to wrap up the show. We'll go back and look at the first bet.NOLA.com odds boost at Caesars Sportsbook. Michael Thomas boosted to 15-1 to win Comeback Player of the Year.
Two of us already have it.
And you guys both like it. Yeah.
We already paid it.
All right. That will be our show for today. We did some NFL, some college football with Wilson Alexander. Our thanks to him. And some Major League Baseball. So final thoughts from you guys. Spencer, the guru, your final thought for this Thursday.
All righty. Yeah, just touch on NASCAR, since they had the controversial finish last week. This week, going to the Indy Road Course, and I was looking at the odds, for my Fast Five column that comes out tomorrow morning. There's a lot of value to be had at this road course because the odds are so much in Chase Elliott's favor. Like it's plus 350 for Chase Elliott to win. No value there. Don't touch Chase Elliott because they've got a lot of other drivers that you can have at like 10-1 or greater odds. Heck, I even have one driver on there at 100-1 who's really solid at this Indy Road Course. So I feel like it's just this is a good week to try to bet a NASCAR winner because there's a lot of new faces that generally don't have much shot to win, but because it's a road course, it opens things up a lot. So yeah, I think this is a week to try to hit it big with a NASCAR winner.
Chase
Hopefully
Elliott's odds really
disqualifications.
Even when Chase Elliott doesn't win, he gets the win. So maybe that's why his odds are that low. I mean, that guy, they just give him wins. So I don't know any. Listen to Spencer on NASCAR at the Indy Road Course. Jim Derry, your final thought.
Datitude tomorrow. These datitudes leading up to the season are shorter than normal, which some people say that's a good thing. But I'm excited about tomorrow. Jeff Duncan's coming on. We're going to have a little announcement to make about some things that are going on with Datitude coming up in about a month or so with Jeff Duncan. And so we'll announce that tomorrow morning. And these NFL team previews are rolling along. Like I said, at the end of next week, we'll be at halftime already. It's hard to believe that we will have done half the teams in the NFL by this time in 8 days from now, and school starting. It's my birthday, August birthday month. It's exciting times.
You don't get to talk about your birthday, but my birthday's tomorrow. That's what I get to talk about.
Exactly. That was my segue.
I'm going to Houston to watch my Mariners play the Astros, a place where they haven't had a lot of
29
success.
Again, huh?
So hopefully they can get there. I'm not 29 again, but I'm not yet 40. So I still got a couple years before I get to 40. Patrick says, who dat? Saints are in camp. LSU is a week away. Football's coming, everybody, and we are here to cover it.
Happy birthday, Zach Ewing.
Every day on bet.NOLA.com. Check us out. Check out Datitude tomorrow morning. That's how I'm going to start my birthday, is by listening to Datitude on the way to
Good way to do it.
So let's do it. For Spencer the Guru Urquhart, for Jim Derry, our thanks to Wilson Alexander. I'm Zach Ewing, and this has been Bayou Bets.